From Pacifica, this is Democracy Now!
Most important, Ernie knows that we can produce more energy and grow our economy while still taking care of our air, our water, and our climate.
As President Obama nominates Ernest Moniz to head the Energy Department, the MIT nuclear physicist is facing criticism for his deep ties to BP, General Electric, and other major firms. We'll also look at Moniz and Fracademia, what some call gas industry-funded academic research. Then Die Free, a heroic family tale.
Tonight, I stand before you as the proud great-great-great-granddaughter of an African who was enslaved in the United States of America until he summoned the courage to fight for his freedom.
As the United Nations marks International Day of Remembrance of the victims of slavery and the transatlantic slave trade, we'll speak with New York One anchor Cheryl Wills about her family's story from slavery to freedom. All that and more coming up. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. The U.S. Supreme Court will hear arguments today in the first of two historic cases that could determine the future of same-sex marriage. Today, the court will take up California's same-sex marriage ban, Proposition 8, and consider whether same-sex couples have a constitutional right to get married. On Wednesday, the Supreme Court will hear a second case that challenges the Defense of Marriage Act, signed by President Bill Clinton in 1996, which denies federal benefits to married same-sex couples. The United States has formally handed control of Bagram prison to Afghanistan following more than a year of delays. The detention center has been dubbed the other Guantanamo after reports of prisoners being tortured and abused there. The exact term of the transfer deal remains shadowy, but the U.S. has reportedly received assurances from Afghan officials they will not release prisoners deemed to pose a security threat. The U.S. will continue to play a role in determining which prisoners are released and will maintain custody of some unknown number of Afghan prisoners and about 36 non-Afghan prisoners. At Monday's ceremony, U.S. General Joseph Dunford, the commander of the NATO forces in Afghanistan, stressed the enduring U.S. role there.
This ceremony to transfer the detention facility is important and it's meaningful. But what's most significant is it's part of a broader political and security transition process. It's a small step towards a transformation that will occur in the years ahead. And let there be no doubt, transformation for those that wear the uniform of the United States does not mean the end of the mission or abandonment. Our mission is changing, but our commitment is enduring.
Within hours of the transfer, Secretary of State John Kerry appeared alongside Afghan President Hamid Karzai during an unannounced visit to Afghanistan. He said the Bagram deal protects both U.S. interests and Afghan sovereignty.
As of today, we don't have prisoners. Whatever is occurring here is under the control of the Afghan people, and the United States will cooperate with the government of Afghanistan.
John Kerry's visit to Afghanistan appeared aimed at easing public tensions following allegations of abuses by U.S. Special Forces in Wardak province and President Karzai's widely reported suggestion the U.S. is colluding with the Taliban. President Karzai said Monday his words had been misinterpreted.
Now, the media took that to say that I said there is a collusion. I never used the word collusion between the Taliban and the U.S., and those were not my words. Those were the U.S. picked up by the media.
Afghanistan was rocked by explosions today on the second day of John Kerry's visit. At least 8 suicide bombers reportedly attacked a police force headquarters in the eastern city of Jalalabad, killing 5 police officers. The United Nations is removing half of its 100 international staff from Syria following heavy fighting in the capital, Damascus. An additional 800 Syrian staffers have been told to work from home temporarily. Martin Naserki, spokesperson for UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon, made the announcement Monday.
Yesterday and today, a number of mortar shells fell in close proximity to and on the grounds of the hotel in Damascus housing UN staff. The mortar fire caused some damage to the building and some cars, including one UN vehicle. The United Nations Security Management Team has assessed the situation and decided to temporarily reduce the presence of international staff in Damascus due to security conditions.
Syrian opposition leaders calling on the United States to more directly intervene in the conflict by using missiles to protect rebel-held areas. Moaz al-Khatib made the comments at the Arab League summit in Doha as he took over a seat previously held by the Syrian government. The League had transferred the seat to the opposition Sunday. Al-Khatib attended the summit despite announcing days ago he was quitting due to a lack of global action on Syria. 2 jailed Bahraini activists are on hunger strike, refusing fluids after being denied visits from their family. Zineb al-Khawaja was sentenced to 3 months in jail earlier this month for insulting a public official. She's been on hunger strike for more than a week and began refusing fluids Sunday, putting her life at imminent risk, according to the Bahrain Center for Human Rights. Zineb's father, Abdulhadi al-Khawaja, who's serving a life term for his role in the pro-democracy uprising, is also said to be on hunger strike. Zineb released a letter from jail writing, quote, "Not wearing the convict's clothes because I have committed no crime, that became my small act of civil disobedience. Not letting me see my family and my 3-year-old daughter, that has been their punishment. That is why I am on hunger strike." You can go to our website to see the interviews with Zineb when she was out of jail. The United States and South Korea have signed a new military pact outlining future responses to North Korea. The pact reportedly promises U.S. support if South Korea retaliates for maritime border incursions and other low-level offenses. North Korea, meanwhile, has issued a new round of threats against U.S. military bases over the flying of U.S. B-52 bombers during military drills with South Korea. Microsoft has admitted the FBI is using secretive national security letters to spy on its customers without obtaining a warrant. The news follows a similar announcement by Google earlier this month, which marked the first time a U.S. company has admitted receiving the secretive requests for user data. The letters come with a gag order that bars the recipient from talking about them. Earlier this month, the federal judge ordered the government to stop issuing the letters, ruling they're unconstitutional and giving the Obama administration 90 days to appeal. Military officials say 3 Guantanamo prisoners have been hospitalized for dehydration amidst a nearly 2-month-long hunger strike that defense lawyers say includes the overwhelming majority of prisoners. The military said Monday 28 prisoners have now refused enough meals to be officially deemed on hunger strike. 10 are being force-fed. Lawyers contest those numbers, saying most of the prison's 166 prisoners are on hunger strike over intrusive searches and their continued detention without charge following unmet promises by Obama to close the prison. The lawyers say multiple prisoners have lost roughly 30 pounds. Army Captain Jason Wright told the Associated Press an Afghan prisoner named Abaydullah has lost 36 pounds and appeared dizzy and fatigued last week. Quote, "It seemed like he didn't have any hope of getting out of Guantanamo Bay," Wright said. To learn more about Abaydullah and hear our reports on the hunger strike, you can go to our website at democracynow.org. A new study commissioned by NATO says a joint U.S.-Israeli cyber attack launched on Iran's nuclear facilities was an act of force that likely violated international law. A group of 20 international researchers reportedly agreed unanimously that the launch of the cyber worm Stuxnet several years ago constituted an act of force, which is prohibited under the United Nations Charter except in cases of self-defense. Some even thought the worm constituted an armed attack, which would mark the start of a conflict and entitle Iran to use force to defend itself. Human rights groups are criticizing the United States and other countries for acting to weaken a draft of what could be the first-ever global arms treaty. Negotiations began at the United Nations in New York last week for a treaty to regulate the $70 billion trade. Earlier talks collapsed last year when the U.S., which leads the world in global arms exports, as well as Russia and China, said they needed more time. On Monday, Anna MacDonald, head of arms control for Oxfam, said the new draft is too weak.
This treaty is not good enough. This is not the treaty that we have been campaigning for 10 years. This is not the treaty that's going to save lives and protect people. The loopholes must be closed, and the President of the Conference must listen to the voices of the majority who have been saying repeatedly during this first week of negotiations, and indeed in informal sessions continuing discussions over the weekend, what they want to see in the treaty, and why this must be a treaty with very comprehensive scope of weapons covered and very tough and clear rules by which governments assess whether or not to authorise an arms transfer.
A new study confirms how deeply gun deaths in the United States are shaped by race. The Washington Post reports African Americans are more than 10 times as likely to be shot dead as white people. Whites are 5 times more likely to commit suicide with a gun than to be killed with a gun. But for each African American who uses a gun to commit suicide, 5 are shot dead by other people. Meanwhile, a poll by the Washington Post and ABC News says 3/4 of African Americans support stronger gun control versus half of white people. Hundreds of people protested at the state capitol building in Bismarck, North Dakota Monday over a series of anti-choice measures that could end abortion in the state. Republican Governor Jack Dalrymple has until Thursday to decide whether to enact the country's strictest abortion ban, barring abortion after an embryonic heartbeat can be detected, something that happens so early many women have not realized they are pregnant yet. Also on his desk is a measure mandating hospital admitting privileges for abortion providers, and another measure that would make North Dakota the first state to ban abortions performed because of genetic problems with the fetus. New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg is drawing attention for saying the use of domestic surveillance drones by New York City authorities and the erosion of privacy that could entail are inevitable. Bloomberg made the comments in a radio interview.
It's just we're going into a different world, uncharted, and like it or not, what people can do or governments can do is different, and you can, to some extent, control, but you can't keep the tides from coming in. We're going to have more visibility and less privacy. I don't see how you stop that. And it's not a question of whether I think it's good or bad. I just don't see how you could stop that, because what's going to happen?
And a new analysis by Congressional Research Service says the U.S. spent nearly $4 million last year on expenses incurred by former presidents. The government covers pensions, office space, staffing, travel, postage, and other costs for all ex-presidents. The biggest spender last year was George W. Bush, who cost taxpayers $1.3 million, including roughly $400,000 for an office in Dallas. Former President Bill Clinton spent even more than that on his New York office space and cost the nation just under $1 million in total last year. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace. Thanks so much for watching this report from Democracy Now!, your daily independent global news hour. We don't accept advertising or corporate funding, but rather rely on donations from viewers like you. Please make your contribution by visiting democracynow.org. We need your support today to keep bringing you this hard-hitting, in-depth reporting.